April, what time is kindergarten orientation?
Hi. Kindergarten orientation is next Monday from 4 to 5. Okay? And we're going to put out an announcement. As usual, we're planning on doing that for every week. I don't know what that's that. All right? All right. Who's your third honor?
Can I get you to turn my mic up for a second? I have a request. Good evening. We're going to start in a few minutes, but just remind people, along with the mask requirement, we ask you please wear your masks properly, covering your nose and your mouth. Thank you very much.
like it or not.
I hope not.
Yeah, when you get in front of me.
It is 6:01. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item C, communications, correspondence. Item C, communication and correspondence. Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I can report that since our last meeting, I've received a total of 30 emails and letters. Just a summary, 26 of them were advocating for the board to look at a mandated mask to start the school year. 4 of them were in support of maintaining the optional program.
Next is item B, public participation. Before we start, I would like to thank you all for being here. I would like to start by recognizing that everyone in this room is here because they love their kids, just like I do. It makes me sad that our kids' childhood is being impacted by this pandemic, but it's out of our control. In order to keep public participation running smoothly, we have 2 lines, one that'll be over there and one over there, where folks may socially distance in line. When indicated, you may approach the podium and address the board. You will have 3 minutes. Mr. Makosian, the end of the table, will be the timekeeper, and he will hold up a sign at the 30 and 15 second mark. Okay, sorry. Got it? When your time is up, you will hear the gavel, and at that time, I will ask you to please finish your sentence and kindly take your seat. There will be no dialogue between those making comments and board members during public participation. Unless you are at the podium speaking, I ask that you please not comment or make remarks. Please be respectful to those who are speaking. If you speak without permission of the board chair, you will be asked to leave. I ask that everyone please keep in mind that we are all here because we love our kids. That may look differently to all of us, but that is why we are here, and our kids are watching and listening to what we say. So, if you would like to speak, you may line up and do so. And now we're all awake.
Is this microphone okay?
Yes.
Madam Chair, before you begin the public speaking portion of this meeting, might I make a request that speakers be permitted to remove their masks so that they are audible to the board and public?
Yes, as long as you're socially distanced, it's fine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you want to tell me when my 3 minutes starts, or?
You ready, Paul?
Ready.
Good evening, members of the school board. I am Representative Billy Bob Faulkner. I am here to speak tonight on behalf of my constituent from Hancock, Fletcher's Landing, Waltham, Mariahville, Osborne, that attend Ellsworth schools. I have come here to urge you to maintain your earlier decision of optional masks. Masks don't stop aerosols. Studies have been inconclusive on whether they reduce transmission in schools. Children that get the virus have mostly mild or asymptomatic reactions and don't spread the virus at a high rate. We had in-person school last year, and there was also almost no transmission related to schools. This wasn't because of masks, it was because kids aren't spreading the virus at a high rate. Some children are fine wearing masks, but others struggle. Those who have myopia can have difficulty seeing because masks fog their glasses. Masks can cause severe acne and other skin problems. The discomfort of masks distracts some children from learning by increasing airway resistance during exhalation. Masks can lead to increased levels of carbon dioxide in the blood, and masks can be vectors for pathogens if they become moist or used for too long. In March, Ireland's Department of Health announced that it won't require masks in schools because they may exacerbate anxiety or breathing difficulties for some students. Some children compensate for such difficulties by breathing through their mouths. Chronic and prolonged mouth breathing can alter facial development. It is well documented that children who mouth breathe because of adenoids block their nasal airways can develop a mouth deformity and elongated face. The possible psychological harm of widespread masking is an even greater worry. Facial expressions are integral to human connection, particularly for young children who are only learning how to signal fear, confusion, and happiness. Covering a child's face mutes those nonverbal forms of communication and can result in robotic and emotionless interactions, anxiety, and depression. Seeing people speak is a building block of phonetic development. It is especially important for children with disabilities such as hearing impairment. I've been waiting and wondering, when will grown-ups speak up for the kids? Now is the time. Your neighbor, RSU 24, has voted to make masks optional, as have all of your Down East school neighbors. Just last night, Maranatha joined the growing list of schools going with masks optional. In the UK, the entire nation has gone maskless. For parents wary of sending their kids off to school, here's a rare bit of comforting data. Fewer than 100 school students and staff in England, 1 in 100 tested positive in June, and the Kappa, there was no mask mandate in schools at that time. That wasn't just a noticeable drop from last fall, it was also came when the Delta variant was peaking across England and the whole of the United Kingdom. Here in the United States, we've been bombarded with a steady stream of fear. It isn't any wonder that we're having a meeting like this.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Pilar Burmeister. I am first and foremost a mother of 4 children, 3 of whom who have graduated from the Ellsworth school system and a 4th who's a senior at Ellsworth High School this year. Second, I am a nurse of 33 years, 20 of which as a family nurse practitioner, and 13 of which as a school nurse. I am currently the director of the School of Nursing at Eastern Maine Community College and have been on the COVID team for the last 18 months and continue to serve as the health consultant to that team. When I was at Parental Elementary School as the school nurse, I presided over the H1N1 outbreak, and due to, I have to say, what I instituted in my school, we had 0 cases in my school, whereas Connors Emerson had to close because they had so many cases. I feel that I have some valid experience in this particular situation to bring to you. I would like to ask the board and parents, what is our objective this year? I would say we would all like to keep kids in school and prevent them from having to learn remotely. Last year was pretty bad for many students, parents, and teachers. I know we do not want to repeat that if we can help it. Aroostook County just went back to school last week, and they didn't have a mask mandate in place, and guess what? They're not in school anymore. They're remote. So that's how that works. This is not what we want. They are now planning on having a mask mandate, so they have learned from their mistake. Let's not make the same mistake that they did. We can mitigate the spread of this virus and prevent having to go remote. The science has actually proven that masking does work to decrease the spread of COVID-19. Dozens of studies done in the US and across the globe have proven that. We need to stop dividing ourselves and find out what common ground we have. I believe that is keeping our kids in school in person. To that end, we must have a mask mandate. I know it's not fun, but neither is being at home with your kids on Zoom. Approximately 40% of people with COVID are asymptomatic, but are still spreading the disease. Therefore, routine screening falls short when it comes to prevention. Vaccines are not available to young children yet. Masks are proven to work in reducing the spread of this disease. That's how we're going to keep kids in school this year, by using all the tools we have in our toolkit. Thank you.
One second. The chairman has asked if we could switch places so she can see the frame.
I want to thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm the husband of a teacher here. Back in May, after our second Pfizer dose and the mask mandates were lifted, life seemed to
Excuse me, could you state your name?
Mike Cronin.
Thank you.
Life seemed to be returning to normal. We were shopping and socializing with fellow vaccinated friends and family members, sans masks, because we were under the impression that we had 95% immunity to COVID, which we did. Immunity to the original strain. As May morphed into June, the vaccination rates plateaued. It became apparent that we would not be capable of reaching herd immunity. Then, like a James Bond villain, Delta descended and began decimating the progress we had made. According to the researchers at the Guangdong Provincial Center for Disease Control and Prevention, people infected with Delta variant have about 1,000 times more copies of the virus in their respiratory tracts than the original strain. Delta is now the dominant strain in the United States and so contagious and pervasive that vaccinated people are now experiencing breakthrough cases. It's proven that vaccines reduce the hospitalization rate, as less than 1% of vaccinated people end up in the hospital. The trouble is that children under the age of 12 are not eligible to be vaccinated yet. They're sitting ducks. Without a school-wide mask mandate, every day my wife enters the school, she is putting our household at risk, especially our 2-year-old son, whom we love more than the moon and stars. Children will be at risk, staff members will be at risk, staff members' children will be at risk. Delta will rip through the school like an invisible buzzsaw. I ask that the board sift through the anecdotal hyperbole tonight and place the highest emphasis on the science and research that have been compiled by professionals, those who have spent their entire lives studying epidemiology and medicine. These are the people we need to heed, and it's rather dystopian that I have to stand here and essentially tell you that science is real. Masks work. There are dozens of verifiable laboratory studies published by the CDC, FDA, several institutes of virology that elucidate the fact that masks are most efficient when everyone wears them, and they reduce transmission rates significantly. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the largest organization of doctors advocating for the health and safety of all children, stalwartly recommends that all eligible individuals should receive the vaccine, which is now FDA approved. They also stress that all students older than 2 years and all school staff should wear face masks at school. The number one reason? A significant portion of the student population is not eligible for vaccination, and vaccination rates among adults are not high enough. There is a wealth of peer-reviewed, verifiable data regarding Delta safety protocols, but as long as there are people who willingly refuse the vaccine, our child, your children, your friends and family will all be at risk, most likely hospitalized, if the school does not adopt a school-wide mask policy. I ask that you please listen to the experts and the evidence that they present. Science is a real thing. Thank you.
children in the EMS school system. My son is going into first grade. He has never experienced 5 days of school, and my daughter is going into third grade. Dear members of the school board, I am here today to ask you to rethink your decision on optional masks for the beginning of the school year. As you have stated more than once, your and our goal as parents is to have our children back in school 5 days a week. As I understand it, with optional masking in the classroom, if there is an exposure to COVID, the whole class will have to quarantine no matter what. If we have 3-foot spacing and mandatory masking, kids and teachers will be able to return to school even if there is a positive case. So in order to not have constant quarantines going on and students and teachers having to stay home for 10 days, masks should not be an option. And for those that hate masks or against mask mandates, I would like to say, please find it within your heart to do the kind thing. Let's protect our children and our teachers that put themselves out there every day to teach our children. We have seen what happened in Aroostook County with schools closing after only a few days of school. It is happening right here in Maine. The same thing will happen at EMS if we don't mandate masks to start the school year and see how things progress. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ready? I'm Nate Hansen. I'm a father, one who just graduated, and a rising sophomore. Thanks a lot for having another meeting to reconsider this and for allowing us a chance to speak. I'll be brief because I think some folks have stated the points that I would make quite well. I think we can all agree that the most important thing is for our kids to be in school 5 days a week. Last year was disruptive to everyone. No one would have chosen that. And this year we're given the choice of what path we take for our children. One of those paths, because of policies that are not up to us, that are set by the Department of Education, and by the reality, which is also not up to us, of this pandemic still being very strong, in fact stronger than it was last year when we were in school with masks. Because of those realities, we are given a choice of having masks in school, protecting our kids from transmission, but also protecting our classrooms from having to be shut down and quarantined by the policies that we will all have to abide by. So, do we choose to have a mask policy, keep our kids in school 5 days a week, or do we choose to make this the hill that we're going to die on, whether or not we wear a mask, which our kids have been doing quite well for the last year and a half, which we have all been doing. Not our first choice, but it's a small thing for us to be able to do, so that our children can stay in school 5 days a week. That's our priority. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marlena Ford, and good evening. I'm the parent of 3 Ellsworth students. I am the spouse of an Ellsworth staff member. I'm also an educator in another school district, and most importantly, I'm a member of this community. I obviously have a vested interest in the safety of the population of our schools, but I'm not going to stand here tonight and argue the science, the efficacy of masking, the seriousness of the Delta variant of COVID-19. All this has been said before, and I don't think anything that I say tonight is going to change anybody's mind. But what I will do is simply call attention to something that we cannot argue, that is an undisputed fact. We all have said we want our kids to continue in school with as little disruption as possible. In order to do this, the simplest thing that we can do as a school community is to have universal masking in our schools. With the state of Maine standard operating procedure, schools that need to follow in response to a positive case, if the school has a universal masking policy, a much smaller number of students and staff members need to quarantine in the event of this positive case in the buildings. Without universal masking, we'll have the disruption of education, learning, social development, and the parent employment, local businesses. I'm a teacher with 21 years of experience. Last year here in Ellsworth and elsewhere, we had the benefit of working with remote learning consistently, and we were prepared and capable of doing so. Most kids did great. Most teachers did great. However, Even then, the disruption of parents' work schedules, childcare, and schooling in person made for suboptimal opportunities for some of our children and our families and our community. I watched many of my students, even some typically strong ones, struggle with learning from home. Those at home, long-term, on quarantine, sometimes repeatedly. A lot of them had little supervision at home after a while, and they had higher learning loss. This year, without regular online learning, with the regular use of these supports that we had, students and staff in quarantine will have the same access as they had before. We no longer have the government protections of employment and financial support for people who need to stay home for COVID-related issues. We've already seen the impact not only in the South, where cases have exploded, but also in our own state, in Aroostook County, and in Southern Maine, where entire football teams have already had to quarantine. We had cases exposed today of the YMCA camp, with kids that will be coming into this building having been exposed today. There's no question that there will be cases in school. We need to make a decision to take the most basic step to help our students and families. With universal masking, we can simply and certainly limit the education and family disruption to many. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Casey Hardwick. You'll have to bear with me, I'm recovering from laryngitis. I am wanting to talk about masks because I think everyone is recommending a cloth mask or a mask of some kind. As I stood here with my blue mask on, I can feel my own breath blowing up against my eyelashes. Last year, Ellsworth High School was gracious enough to hand out masks to our student body, but after it came to light that those masks had a warning label inside that said not intended to prevent or eliminate exposure to any disease, infection, or communicable disease, they were collected, and our students could not wear them any longer. I went to the store and purchased another cloth mask. On the back, it does have a warning that says, non-medical grade, no warranties, this mask prevents infection or transmission of viruses, not intended for use by children. These other masks all have the exact same warning that you buy at Walmart. They are all cloth masks. Our school replaced their cool EHS Eagles masks with these white ones that have no label because the label is actually on the package, but we can't see what it says. These masks, I don't feel are important enough to our kids. My son feels like people become antisocial. They will not talk to you in school. It is not a good situation. I also urge the board to please read out loud the standard operating procedure from the Department of Education that addresses pool testing. Because my understanding of this is that if your child enrolls in pool testing, that there are exceptions to the quarantine rule, even for unvaccinated children. So it is very important that you all pull this offline. It's available for you. I urge you to read it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is David Webb, and I appreciate, everybody's scientific data, which is really unproven, especially when it comes to things like the vaccine. And I appreciate the fact that people want to come out with scientific data about the masks. This lady that just spoke, spoke to the real thing. You can't guarantee that masks are going to keep COVID out of the classroom. You can't do it. But what I want to do is address the kids. And I want to talk a little bit about perceptive psychology. There's been studies now about perceptive psychology and what the masks do to children, all right? We can all, as parents, remember the first time we saw a smile from our little bitty baby. Can you remember that? You know how much that speech, the volumes that speaks to us? Or when you give your 18-month-old a slice of lemon, and he takes a bite of it. These things are real. Do you know that babies, infants, and this is fact, okay, that they feel with facial recognition before they deal with hearing a voice? Do we communicate with our face? Not just our hands, not just our voice, but it's real and it's important. It's important for kids to be able to talk to one another facially. Facially. And to get that from the children too. One of the saddest days of my life was walking into Walmart last year, and everybody's wearing a mask in there. They allowed 50 people at a time going in there, but I came back to my car and I began to cry, and my wife says, "What's wrong?" And I says, "I'm beginning to see the steel look in all their eyes. They're buying in. They're buying into this, okay? They're buying into it." My thing is this, and it's funny that we sit 6 feet apart here at this meeting, yet we have to wear a mask. You know why? Maybe you don't want to see our faces. Maybe you don't want to see how we want to communicate to you. This way. This is just as important as our voice. And you opened up with the narrative that, oh my goodness, this thing hit us, coronavirus hit us, the pandemic hit us, and we've got no control. You know what hit us? Fear hit us. And it's pushed off onto the kids. Suicide rates are up 504. 504 overdose deaths last year. Not from the coronavirus, from fear. Fear had a lot to do with that. Everything is climbing up. These are the smallest. These are the gems of our society. These are the little ones. We need to recognize that. We need to make sure that they get the proper schooling they get. Without that.
Can I start? Thank you. I'm Ann Dudet, mother of 2 kids in Ellsworth, grade 3 and grade 6. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone here who is properly wearing their masks as required, over the nose and over the mouth. And tonight, I could speak about statistics and repeat everything you already know. I hope the board realizes this decision should be based on medical and scientific evidence, not the results of a survey anyone could take that had no security or controls and still barely came out of favor of no masking. However, my 3 biggest concerns: 1, the cafeteria. There is no way on earth to keep kids safe with a regular lunch. Children of different ages, in different classrooms, all crammed in this room. No masks while talking, laughing, choking, and sneezing on each other because, let's face it, kids can be gross. It will be a breeding ground for the Delta to wipe through Ellsworth Elementary. Why can't they eat like they did last year in their rooms? 2, masking. Ellsworth needs a universal mask policy. Vaccinated people can still spread virus to the unvaccinated. Whatever percentage of 12+ individuals at the school who are vaccinated has no bearing on the safety of younger children who cannot be vaccinated. Vaccines only protect the vaccinated. Also, any attempt to adjust masking policy based on reported cases is too late. The cases are already here, spreading. And my last thing, to all the parents, right over there: honesty, trustworthiness, kindness, respect, and responsibility. We are supposed to teach our kids this. Yes, you should think critically, review available information, and question if it seems wrong. However, if something does seem wrong, it is not a license for you to attack those who don't reach the same conclusion as you. Other parents have told me to shut the hell up, that I should move away if I don't like it. No, sorry. And other obscenities. What are we teaching our children? How is the school going to protect us and our kids from bullying if you are learning that from your children? That said, we all really do need to come together. It will take everyone working together to have a chance to beat the virus. Being nasty and attacking others who disagree with you will not improve our chances. Please know I sympathize with you guys on the school board. It never should have been put in your hands. It is a medical decision. This decision is between having enough pediatric ICU beds, which we have about 16 in the state of Maine, and having your child life-flighted out because of his appendix burst. It is the decision between being mildly inconvenienced wearing a mask or your child needing therapy
because they got their best friend sick and now they have to go to their funeral. Wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, and just be a decent human being. Thank you.
Excuse me. Please, can you have your masks on properly or exit the building? Over the nose, please.
Hi, my name is Ryan Clark. I'm going to be a freshman at Ellsworth High School, and I wanted to bring up the fact that I don't think has been brought up enough to you guys or my parents, is the mental health factor that has gone into this. January 27th, I woke up to my phone being absolutely blown up because my child best friend died by suicide.
Oh, goodness.
At 14 years old, he decided to take his life. I don't know why he did it. Nobody knows why he does it. Main childhood suicides have gone up astronomically over the past year. Astronomically. By the way, that's only including 15-year-olds to 19-year-olds. That's not including the 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14-year-olds, and sometimes even younger, that have committed suicide. We don't know why they did it. We don't know. A lot of times you can't stop them. A lot of times there's nothing you can feel like you can do. And let me tell you what this 14-year-old girl felt like when she woke up to that phone call. I was actually, put in perspective, I had to go into therapy because of all the restrictions and over COVID-19. I was up at 6 a.m. that morning to go attend my therapist's appointment. I was so upset and so unsettled that I could not attend my therapy appointment. My therapy that's supposed to help me with that stuff. I just want to picture it with your kids. Imagine your 11 or 12-year-old waking up and finding the news that their best friend has passed away. Really, I mean, let's be realistic here. 504? That's 504 too many kids. You think about 504, they all at least had one friend. Do the math. Thousands of kids are being affected by this. And nothing has been done to change it. Nothing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joshua Dudet, parent of 2 children in the Ellsworth School Department. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. I won't cover most of what's been said, but I do just want to point out that masking and social distancing are proven mitigation strategies for reducing the spread of COVID. We've seen this time and again, but a very telling example just recently is the cases of COVID in Broward County School District in Florida and the Los Angeles County School District in California. In California, where they had masking, social distancing, and other mitigation measures, after the first week of school, they had about 1.5% of their students out in COVID-related quarantine or isolation. In Florida, that figure is 4%, with no masking, social distancing, or other mitigation measures. So, all things being equal, it would appear that those measures do have some success. I'd also like to point out that attempting to adjust masking policy in response to COVID numbers is too late. The infections have already occurred. Children are already spreading infection, and masking after the fact is not going to help. The simple fact of the matter is Ellsworth needs the universal masking policy. We all have to wear clothes in public. We have to wear seatbelts when we drive our cars. Our children have to wear helmets on their bicycles. Masking is just another public safety measure. The time to call the fire department is when you smell the smoke, not when the house is up in flames. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go. All right, I'm Sarah. I'm a mom of 2 kids in the Ellsworth system. Come on up. And Mr. Munier, one of my big problems was, and that we have talked about, is My son is in the 4th grade. It is important for them to see what the teachers are saying. It is important for the enunciation. We're not remembering everything. We're only so focused on this mask that doesn't even, once it's wet, isn't this correct, Mr. Munier? That the germs will go right through once these
Sarah, please be kind.
I am trying to be kind, but I am trying to get the facts.
I understand you're passionate,
Okay.
but you need to speak kindly.
And the Delta variant is affected in 10 seconds. So if they are all going to be in here, the only way to keep them protected is with an N95 or a respirator. Are we going to put all of our kids in an N95 or a respirator? Because otherwise these don't work. I'm talking to my sister who is a nurse with COVID patients. She wears a huge mask this is not protecting anything. We are in a room. We've already been exposed. And Ms. McKinney, I have seen you on Facebook as of a few days ago. And you
Sarah,
said
you are done. You can sit down, please.
out and about doing whatever
Sarah,
it is they want.
Sarah, you are done. You may leave. Sarah, you may leave the meeting, please.
No, thank you.
You may leave.
No, thank you.
Yes.
You are a hypocrite. You absolutely are on Facebook with no mask, but it's like you want to go and live your
Sarah, I am vaccinated, and I can be without a mask.
You said that they are getting vaccinated, they should be able to be without masks. That's why these kids went and got vaccinated. So they could be maskless. Ridiculous.
She was not rude either. She does not need to take that here. This is ridiculous.
Not rude. Passionate. Freedom of speech.
There is a difference between freedom of speech and attacking someone else.
Folks, we need to please maintain order, please.
You need to remember, we don't work for you, you work for us.
That's right.
You work for us, you're paid by us.
Folks, please maintain order. Call the rules.
You may speak. Hi, Michelle Gaffman, good counselor, healthcare provider, and mom to a sophomore at Ellsworth High School. And I understand that the CDC is going back and forth on the usefulness of masks. And I think that there needs to be some clarification as to how it pertains to children in school. And I am one that looks at data and studies that are peer-reviewed and independent, meaning that they're not funded by any special interest, are usually the most reliable because we know that in a lot of cases, he who funds the study controls the results. Surgical masks provided for children are not effective in stopping aerosolized viral particles, as they range from 0.2 micrometers to 0.6 micrometers of available space between fibers, according to the CDC, as well as the study conducted by the EPA. Pretty independent. The COVID viral particles are 0.001 micrometers, meaning that they pass right through the surgical masks and the cloth masks. So, and this study was not looking at escape, the air escape that you feel around your eyes and around the sides. The EPA found that the surgical masks were only effective up to 38.4% of the time on an adult wearing it properly for which it was made to fit. The mask, when it becomes saturated, does lose efficacy because if you are in a heavy COVID environment, that COVID, let's say it does get on the mask, well, you're taking it in, but also if it's on the surface of the mask, it's being propelled outward. It's far worse for cloth masks, and there's a study out of Waterloo that shows that masks are only 10% effective in preventing COVID, and that study again looked at adults. The masks that we have for children are not properly fitted, unless it's specially made for children. And the only effective mask to prevent COVID would be an N95 or a cloth mask with an N95 filter, which makes it difficult to breathe. And that comes to another factor, and that is hypercapnia, or retained CO2. They found that although the normal rate of CO2 is 0.04 in the normal adult, they found that the amount of CO2 retained by children was 13 to 13,900 parts per million of carbon dioxide. Now what does this cause for children? It causes confusion. Did I get a warning on the time?
Excuse me?
I didn't see the warning.
Oh, sorry. Held up the warning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I speak again then? Am I around?
No, thank you. No, I'm sorry. Each person gets 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We ready? My name is Shane Kane. I've got 2 kids here. I'm going to start out by saying I have not been given a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and of a sound mind. I have studied this myself. And I'm going to tell you what, all these things do is spread disease. They are not N95s, they are not respirators, and all they do is spread disease. I believe the science that said my kid needs to get bacteria and different things so that they can have a strong immune system. So just as passionate as all these people are about wearing masks, I'm not passionate about not wearing masks, because I believe that we are built to fight off disease. And if we keep doing this, we're going to weaken our kids' immune system, and then you're going to see some real deaths. These things do nothing but spread disease. Nothing. You know what they do? They make people feel good about themselves. I'm doing something about this disease. You're doing nothing but spreading it. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob Terwilliger, and I'm here to speak to you again in protest about the mandatory masking. Last time I spoke with you, I drew some parallels to the still face experiments done by Harvard University in the 90s. I asked you to consider the long-term repercussions of having children masked all day from the age of being a toddler all the way to 18 years of age. The folks screaming today that it's perfectly fine for children to be masked all day, rebreathing their own filth, are the same folks who told you that school was too difficult. No child left behind. We need more Common Core and standardized testings. Well, after 20 years, 2 decades worth of snake oil sales and selling new textbooks, I think the results are in as far as that goes. Children are less prepared for their futures now than ever before. They underperform on standardized tests all the time in this country. Not prepared for the work environment when they get out of school, let alone to perform academically in college. So why would we continue to listen to these same experts? Imagine an entire generation of children will grow up even further behind now, both academically and now socially. Like these folks have said, these kids need to read faces. They need to understand how to interact with people. And we're never going to get to a point where disease is gone. We're never going to get to a point where it's like Avatar and you live in a little bubble and visit everybody virtually. That's not going to happen. So the future that these people are begging and kicking and screaming for, I just don't understand. I'm sure the school is offering up gifted and talented programs by lottery across the country that will fix the academic problems. But the real reason I think so many folks wear masks that are clearly labeled by the manufacturer not to prevent the transmission of COVID or any virus, since you would sue them if you got sick, is that deep down people fear that they've made a mistake. They don't want to be alone in their choice. If they go down, everybody's going with them. That's all there is to it. There's no way, it's absolutely inconceivable that simple folks like us were right and they were wrong. After all, they followed the science. They did what they were told to do. And even if we are right and mask serve is only a mechanism to further damage our children's minds and body, everyone has to mask so that everybody suffers equally. In closing, I'm reaffirming my stance that masking should be left up to the parents to decide what's best for their children. If you're afraid, put your kid in a mask, you're safe. If not, leave the rest of us alone.
Hi, I'm Casey think it's really that we are putting all of our sadness and frustration about what has been lost because of the pandemic in the last year on the masks. I don't really think it's about the masks though. It's been a really hard year for everybody. It's been a really hard year for the kids, year and a half. So I think we're talking about masks today, but I don't really think it's about the masks. I'm a family doctor. I've spoken to other pediatricians in Ellsworth, and as already been said, the American Academy of Pediatrics is recommending a layered approach to prevent the spread of COVID-19 this year. So masks is one of the layers, ventilation is one of the layers, social distancing is one of the layers. A lot of people have been giving the scientific data today, and I'm not sure where it all comes from, but within the medical community, it's pretty accepted that masks are an important part of preventing the spread of disease. It's pretty well accepted that this is a disease that's changing and we don't know all the answers to it. The recommendation is to use all the mitigation strategies to keep the children safe because ICUs, pediatric ICUs across the country are being filled up and we don't know all the answers yet. So there's no question that masks help. There's no convincing scientific data that wearing a mask harms the children. There's a lot of data showing that being out of school, being back in quarantine, in and out of school and disrupted, which will definitely happen if the children are not wearing masks, is dangerous. If my child, and I'm just going to read you a quick little thing that hopefully is 1 minute that was written by a teacher that I think is really nice. Pandemics end, battles subside. Not yet, and maybe not for a long time. This chapter will one day be in the rearview mirror, and we will all likely view it as a defining chapter in our lives. The question I remember myself by is, how well did I show up for the people in my life in that time of need? So I hope that you, the school board, will make the decision that keeps our children safe and keeps them in the classroom 5 days a week. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And I, just like every other parent, received a survey asking what we prefer as far as masks and pool testing. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that the results from that survey is the reason optional masking was voted in, as it should have been. Did you know your mouth is the dirtiest part of your body? There are some people here tonight demanding we force every single child to wear a mask over the dirtiest part of their bodies and breathe in it all day long. Regardless of how anybody else feels about it, they need to feel safe. That sounds like child abuse to me. I fully support anyone who chooses to wear a mask. That's their decision to make for them and their families. But they do not get to make that decision for my children. The survival rate for children ages 0 to 19 is 99.997%. School-age kids are from what? 5 to 18? Here's a sad fact for you. In 2019, a National Youth Risk Behavior Survey, 5.4% of high school students drove when they had been drinking at least once in the 30 days before taking the survey. And 16.7% had rode with a driver who had been drinking in the same time period. Yet I don't see a single one of you trying to stop teenagers from getting their license. We haven't used this rule for a reason, and it's time that we start letting it do its job. The virus isn't going anywhere, folks. No amount of masking or vaccines will ever change that. The CDC isn't even reporting cases of infection post-vaccine. There are people here tonight that are shouting from the rooftops, but the science says. You should know there are doctors and scientists all over the world who are being censored. There are articles that search engines will not let you see, and videos being removed from every social media platform for spreading false or harmful information. That says the science you preach isn't true. By the way, I can YouTube any surgery that has ever been done, order the supplies I need to do it with from Amazon and have it delivered to my house. That sounds a lot more harmful than a doctor's testimony. Our children need to get back to normal. CDC Director Robert Redfield said that the suicides and drug overdoses have surpassed the death rate for COVID-19 among high school students as a direct result of COVID lockdowns and social distancing. There was a 22.3% spike in ER trips for potential suicides by children ages 12 to 17 in the summer of 2020 compared to 2019. It's time to stop living in fear and start standing up for our children. And I just want to say, If you have your children so scared that they're going to get their friends sick and kill them, there's something wrong. We are doing something wrong. And shame on you for making that baby leave. Thank you.
Before the next speaker goes, if we could just ask speakers to please get a little closer to the microphone and speak into it. My understanding is the YouTube feed is not being heard clearly. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. So there's obviously a lot of differences of opinion here.
Could you say your name, please?
Oh, excuse me. My name is Lucille Pullen. I'm a family physician in the community. And I have a husband who's a nurse at Mancos Hospital, a sister who's a pediatrician in Portland, Maine. So I speak from some experience about people who interface a lot with COVID patients. There's a lot of differences of opinion in the room, and there's no way that stating any facts or data are going to change anybody's mind, obviously. But this is not an issue that should be decided based on emotion. Lots of emotion here, and it should definitely not be decided on how loud that emotion is, but rather by an analysis of facts. You probably know that the Delta variant is much more contagious than the original COVID virus. That means it's going to spread a lot more easily. Last year, we had masks in the school. We did pretty well in Ellsworth. Right now, the ICUs are filling up again with COVID patients. 2% of those patients are children. 2%, that doesn't sound like a lot. But if it's your child on a ventilator fighting for her life, that's the only percentage that matters to you. I don't think anyone here wants their children to get COVID, even though there's a belief that it may improve your immunity somehow. COVID kills, and that is a fact. Right now, there's a nursing shortage everywhere. Physicians are burned out. If you get sick from something that's not COVID, there's a good chance you cannot get an ICU bed. People die of heart attacks because COVID is taking priority. Masks help. Masks make a difference. And this virus, this pandemic, is bigger than you. It's bigger than all of us. What we need to do is our best job to keep our children safe, to keep our teachers safe, to keep our community safe, to keep the hospitals from being overrun by COVID patients, and to keep the physicians and nurses and other healthcare workers from being completely overrun. So my suggestion is that you start the year with masks, give it 2 or 3 months, and then consider maybe stopping them if everything is going well. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Heidi Alma. I teach social studies at Ellsworth High School, and I'm not here to talk about masks this evening. I want to take a few moments tonight to address a word that I have heard being tossed around lately, a word that to many is offensive, and that word is Nazi. The Nazis, as I am sure most of you know, were in power in Germany from 1933 to 1945. When the Nazis came to power, they had 2 goals. One was to take as much land that they believed to be rightfully theirs from other countries by starting a war. You will know it as World War II. And the second was to completely annihilate the Jewish population from the earth. While the Nazis were busy murdering the Jews, they also stole their property. So the Nazis were murderers and they were thieves. So when you call someone a Nazi, you are either calling them a murderer and a thief, or you are saying that the Nazis were not really that bad, and the horrors that the Jews experienced during the Holocaust were in fact exaggerated. I would ask people to choose other words more carefully to express their dissatisfaction. Secondly, I would like to encourage the Ellsworth community, of which I am a member, to consider how we have reacted to each other over the past several months. Our students need us to show them how to react in situations just like these, when we disagree, when we feel frustrated. Our students need us to show them how to react in kindness, in empathy, and respect, not with name-calling. Our kids need us to be better. I truly believe we can be better. I encourage us all to think about the example that we are setting for our students. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Sheehan. I'm from Iowa. I was sitting at home and Otis watching this on YouTube, and so I drove in, so I apologize if this has already been said. And I don't understand what's happened to my body, my choice. And as far as my kids, I birthed them, and I don't understand why I don't get to give them my choice. And I understand the Delta variant is being made incredibly scary by the media. However, we've had hundreds of thousands of people come through our tiny area in the past 2.5 months. And I think it was as bad as it's being portrayed, that we would have 57 people in the ICU, or 50-something people in the ICU, and 27 people on ventilators as of yesterday. I think we have people in the streets on cots on ventilators. And I don't understand why kids have been together all summer, and doing sports together all summer, can't come to the school and still be together, and not have masks on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cosmo Siebold. I'm a resident of Ellsworth, and I've had 2 kids in the Ellsworth school system. I'm here tonight basically to speak up for the kids who are unvaccinated, who are at highest risk, but also for all the employees who work in schools, who are put at risk every day by the kind of the dynamics that are beginning to play out about people being afraid of masks. I think one of the things that's really hard in this context is for us to not focus on me, my kids, this, that, or the other thing, but to think about all of the educational professionals, all the people who make these institutions run, for whom the school board is largely responsible for their well-being, who have put their lives at risk over the last 1.5 years to educate our kids and to try to make it as seamless as possible. And I know none of the teachers here tonight has it been seamless for them, because I've seen what our kids have gone through. So I'm sort of speaking out tonight because when the pandemic began, the academic administration and the school board easily decided to require masks. When you started the academic year last year, you decided to require masks. No data has changed, the situation has not changed, and I'm absolutely mystified by the fact that we're even having this conversation. Because what was good for the kids last year and kept them safe and the year before should be good enough this year. And I think one of the things that I would really encourage the board to do some soul searching on is as people are yelling at you and screaming and calling people names, is to sort of, in the cold light of day, say, oh, last year was terrible because kids couldn't be in school. When they were back in school, it was better. Thank you, Paul. And I think our goal has to be to keep kids in school 5 days a week, because what we saw last year was where the real lack of thriving happened was when kids were isolated from each other on Zoom screens. So I'm begging you to think of those kids, how they'll thrive 5 days a week, and we don't repeat the kinds of mistakes that are made in other schools. And also to think of all the educational professionals who fill this building and give their lives for our kids' education. And thank you for tonight's meeting, to hear this again and to go through all the kinds of emotions and yelling and screaming that's going on. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is William Finalizing. I've lived in this town my whole life. I graduated from this school in 1993. It was a lot different back then. But now my daughter goes to school here, and I've heard a lot of stories, most of them warring from both sides of the aisle. And so I'd like to tell a little story instead. Growing up, my mom had 5 kids. So breakfast time, we didn't have a lot of choices. We had generic cereal, instant oatmeal, but we did have chickens. And so most mornings I made myself about 3 or 4 scrambled eggs every single day. My grandmother was an RN, and she was scared to death that my cholesterol must be through the roof and I was going to have a heart attack any day. So when I was 14 years old, I went to the doctor and I got a cholesterol test. And much to everybody's surprise, my cholesterol was very low and very good. And my pediatrician, Dr. Kipperman, said, that's impossible, because I told him I had 3 or 4 eggs every day. And he had another test done, and it also came back lower than the first test. And I know a lot of people right now, they're all saying trust the science like it's some kind of religion. And all I have to say is that is obviously you don't understand how science works. It took them 20 years to get that right, to figure out that they actually had that, to figure out that they had that so wrong. And the low fat, no cholesterol, high carb diet, what's going on with this thing? Sorry. The diet that they preached for so long was actually terrible. It led to a massive amount of diabetes and obesity, and that's what's killing people these days. It's not COVID, it's the underlying conditions. And I'm sorry, I got a little distracted because the mic kept cutting out, but the Delta variant is very, very contagious, and if your kid's in a classroom for 7 hours a day with a bunch of kids, I don't think this is going to help. It's for large droplets. It's, just like everybody said. And I know there's some guidance out there that if the kids are wearing masks, apparently we can just ignore the fact that there's a contact. But my girlfriend's a frontline worker, and if there is a positive case and my daughter's sitting 3 feet away from them for an entire day, whether they're wearing masks or not, I'm going to want to pull her out of school for a couple of days. So that's all I have to say. I know it's a contentious issue, and everybody's contentious these days, but glad I could be here. I actually watched part of the meeting at home. I didn't even want to come because I didn't want to put a friggin' mask on, but I just couldn't stay home and not speak my mind. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Sprague. I also have a child going into Ellsworth High School this year. I'm going to go and agree with him. I've had chickenpox twice, shingles, I've had RSV, influenza B, H1N1, and my lung capacity is like 95%, so you're going to beat the virus. But putting this mask on doesn't make you a hero, doesn't do anything. I've been blocking farts with my t-shirt my entire life, and I still smell them, so I can smell, crap from a mile away. And this is, everyone that's putting these regulations that we have no control over, we gave them their jobs, and then now they're telling us how to live our lives, and it doesn't really make much sense. My kid is my kid, and none of your damn business. My body is my body, and I don't care if you got vaccinated. I don't care, realistically, if you're sick. It's none of my business. Your body will fight it off where it won't. This is a fear tactic, and this is what it's designed to do. I mean, there's a healthcare shortage because they're firing healthcare workers for not getting a vaccine they're not comfortable with getting, and they work with these people that are sick, and none of you think that is a red flag. And you guys' job is education. So teach our kids how to pay attention for signs like this, because this is tyranny. This was done. Nazis being thrown around a lot because this was done by the Nazis 100 years ago. Those who choose to forget the past are condemned to repeat it. My kid, not your business.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Casey, and I'm a proud parent of a graduate from the first COVID class of 2020, and I have an 8th grade student here at EENS. Children and their education is what brings all of us here this evening. Our children are the heart and the soul of our community. Their smiles, accomplishments, success, and failures remain etched in our memories. Excuse me. Humane CDC has reported that the Ellsworth School District has achieved a 95% vaccination rate for ages greater than the age of 12. While this number may be slightly overestimated, it does portray that Ellsworth schools have a high rate of vaccination. One universal policy may not be the best solution in this case. With that said, we need to focus our efforts on developing a method and a plan for the reversal that does not require contentious meetings and can meet requirements and guidance based on transmission. To our sweet children, we value and love you. Keep smiling. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Katie Clough, and I have 2 children in the school system. I have a 3rd grader and a 1st grader. One issue that I would like to bring up tonight is about special needs kids, as both of mine are. My son, when he started kindergarten last year, he stopped smiling. My son is the greatest kid in the entire world, and he has so much compassion for other people. We live in an apartment complex with elderly housing. We had a neighbor who had an episode, and she collapsed on the ground. He waited with her until the ambulance came, because he didn't want her to be alone. He dreads coming to school. He got diagnosed at 3 years old with an impulse control disorder and ADHD. He's now been diagnosed with anxiety and sensory issues. He cannot wear a mask. He cannot get through the day with wearing a mask. He was sick more times last year than I can count. I had to take him for 7 COVID tests last year because of his mask. And the acne on his face has scarred him. His older sister, who is 8, also has sensory issues, and she cannot wear the mask. They don't feel like coming to school is safe anymore because they're being forced to mask and breathe in their own CO2. And the germs that they're breathing out, they're breathing back in, which is causing them to get sick. My daughter had 5 COVID tests last year because of her mask wearing. I understand that I'm not trying to be selfish. That's not the way I'm trying to come across. But if I don't stand up for my children because they can't stand up for themselves, who's going to? When my son was first diagnosed with his first mental illness, I was told, you are your child's best advocate. So if I don't speak for him, who will? As these other parents have spoken tonight, for their children. I understand you guys have an amazing job trying to make our children safe and school a very important part of their lives. But what happened to my body, my choice? They are our children. We should be able to make that decision. If you're scared, wear your mask. But I refuse to let my children live in fear. I refuse to let them think that school is, as my daughter says, a stupid place to be. I want them to come here, get an education, make friends. But they can't do it if you're going to force them to mask. Because they don't smile anymore. They don't like coming here. They don't understand. And I can't explain it to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak up?
My name is Fred Byer. I have some grandchildren that went here. Daughter who's an educator here. My concern is twofold. One, he's got the board. Well, let's see. The goal here is to keep our kids safe. The goal of all the parents is to try and keep their kids safe. And everyone identifies with that goal. And I identify with the right of everyone to choose whether or not their kid wears a mask. I have no problem with that. My problem is with the board. Your job is to make this place the safest it can be for our kids. Just because someone disagrees with that doesn't mean you have to accede to their wishes. I mean, an article in the newspaper today regarding one of the board members was, well, the data says, and here from the scientific people said that I'm trained in health policy or whatever the degree was, but gee, there was this poll, so I decided I'd better play to the audience essentially and vote a poll as opposed to stepping back and look at your responsibilities and say, what is the best way to keep our children safe? What is the best way to keep our staff safe? The people who interact with your children and the children who interact with the staff. And this transmission thing is, we don't have the data on that yet, except one of the good things about the state of Maine is we have a sort of low infection rate compared to a lot of other states. And that's because we have these, as described by some people, draconian measures for shutting things down. So we were able to open up a little bit earlier and more safely during the summer. But unfortunately, Florida did the same thing. And it's a lag effect. I think we should be concerned about increased transmission. Everyone, not everyone, I know I can't convince anybody, but all the data about the size of the particles in the mask and so forth and so on, if this were all true, why don't all studies of people wearing masks show that transmission rates and so forth at these schools and businesses are down? You don't think everybody out there, hundreds of millions who are wearing masks, are all wearing those, what, C95 or whatever, the expensive masks that have been brought up. But I just to reiterate, you have every right to tell your child to wear a mask or not wear a mask. But the board has every right to set policies that will provide safety for all of the children.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Amanda McLaughlin. I just want to first say thank you so much for holding another meeting, and thank you to those who have come in support of mandating masks. I appreciate the bravery of those people because this is a scary venue. So thank you. I just wanted to say that our kids are the teachers and the school's business, and I hold the teachers at very high esteem for that and appreciate their thoughtfulness and caring for our children. And so it is their responsibility to make sure our kids are safe. Our kids struggled because they weren't in school, not because they were wearing masks. I'm just asking that you vote to keep our kids in school 5 days, and masks are what will keep them there. And in the wise words of Olaf, do the next right thing. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kristen Schleifer, and I'm a parent of an EMS student and Ellsworth resident. I wanted you to know that my daughter is also on a 504 plan, so I understand she has an aversion to wearing a mask. It's not easy. It's not. But we've chosen to homeschool our daughter this year because when masks were made optional and remote learning was not made an option this year, which she thrived in last year. I know she was one of few, but she did thrive. We decided that it was best for us to homeschool because it's mentioned that her accommodation would be to not wear a mask. Well, when nobody's masked, that's hardly an accommodation. It's actually putting her in a dangerous situation. So unfortunately, we chose to homeschool. We're actually kind of excited about it. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, and only a few people have mentioned it, and I'm surprised, is the parent survey that was taken, which I know the board knows my feelings on this. I'm just going to read from this because it's easier. So, the parent survey that was taken and has been cited over and over by both board members and members of our community in the media and on social media. I asked about the response to this survey in comparison to other surveys sent home by the same mode of delivery, and if the responses to the survey were validated. Mr. Higgins responded, quote, The number of responses was higher than surveys distributed prior to the start of the 2020-21 school year. The survey was distributed through our emergency notification system, which does include contact information from more than one household member. Given the survey tool that was used, any party with the link could complete the survey. With that being said, we did remove from the final tally identical responses originating from the same email address. All non-duplicate responses from unique email addresses were included in the survey results that were presented at the August 12th board meeting. With a career in analysis, I know that data can only reasonably be utilized once it has been validated. The survey itself is not valid. Therefore, the results should not have been disclosed, as they are more than likely skewed in some way. As Mr. Higgins stated, it was necessary to remove duplicate responses who used the same email. That means there were participants trying to skew the results. With this, it is a reasonable assumption that some students may have been represented more than once in the final results using numerous email addresses. I understand that the survey is not intended as a vote, but taking feedback to make a decision based on all relative factors. The fact that this was not a vote has been very clearly misunderstood by many in our community. In the future, I hope the board designs surveys that for absolute validation and transparency. In the meantime, please discontinue citing the survey and do not allow it to be a factor in your decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Joel Horn. Most of you, if not all of you, have an idea who I am. I work for a telecommunications company. I'm in 5 to 6 different people's houses every day. I work out on MBI. I've seen 4 million cars cross that bridge every summer. A vast majority of these people, when I say vast majority, there are fewer masks walking around Bar Harbor than are in this room right now, right? So we're taking millions and millions of people into this area, yet our sickness rate is not going up. Maybe we have kids that are, or kids or people, humans, adults, that are coming down with the COVID, but the sickness rates, the real sickness rates, are extremely low. We allow our children to do several things that are far more dangerous than walking around without a mask on, showing up at school without a mask on. Playing football is more dangerous. Playing soccer is more dangerous. Everything is more, walking down the street is more dangerous. I believe you're more likely to be struck by lightning than to die from this disease. So all we're doing is promoting fear, right? America is based on the right of the individual, not of the group. And you people are trying to take our freedoms away, right? I know there are a lot of women in here, right? That my body, my choice has been a statement echoed for 30 years. You're more than welcome to go get the vaccine, to go wear a mask. But to mandate that we put our children, make them jump through hoops for something that is far less dangerous than getting in a car and driving, what do we do?
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
I'd just like to give a moment for the 15 people in Afghanistan who were injured and the 12 soldiers that were killed today in the bombing. I think it's something we can all agree on.
Excuse me?
She'd like to give a moment for the soldiers that were killed in the bombing in Afghanistan.
Yes, of course.
I mean,
120 civilians.
and the civilians, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. If no one else would like to speak, this is the end of public participation. And from this point forward, there will be no more input from the public. And we will move on to new business. mask policy for the start of school. Mr. Higgins, would you like to start, or would you like?
Well, I think just to lay out the process is people in the audience are aware, people are viewing, people are aware. 2 weeks ago, the board passed its approved the back-to-school plan, which included a policy with regard to optional masking except in areas of high traffic. And areas of high traffic have been defined as places like this room when students are in assemblies or in the main hallways and things of that nature. At that time, the board, when they voted, did talk about the fact that this was a decision being made based upon current information at that time that they had, and that the decision would be a fluid decision ongoing and intended to have it on agendas of all subsequent meetings. This meeting was scheduled tonight. Originally it was supposed to be a workshop, but because of the amount of information coming in, some other items that were on the agenda after this particular item, it was converted to be a special meeting. So the opportunity here for tonight is for all of you who have come and give public comment, which we appreciate, and all of you who have sent in information by email and telephone and other means. It's appreciated. This is an opportunity for the board to take a look at or review the guidance that's out there from the various parties that were mentioned by many of the people in the public, other information that you may have. Also talk a little bit about some things that have happened locally. One of the things that CDC, the Department of Education, is talking about is as you're looking at trying to start the school year safely and keeping kids in school, and those two goals have to be together, safely and keeping kids in school 5 days a week. It encourages us to look at local data, which isn't always easy to find. One thing that I would share, and people probably are aware of this, there was a positive case at the end of the YMCA summer camp today, and there are 112 students who are being told that they need to quarantine for 10 days because they're mostly unvaccinated. And if any of you are parents who receive that notification, please contact your school's principal because that quarantine holds for school also. But that's a case right here in town that affects many of our students. There's also just down the road an outbreak being investigated by the CDC at Seaport Nursing Home. It was in the online Ellsworth American today. We're talking about 5 staff members and 3 patients at this point in time. I will also tell you there'll be a notification going out tomorrow. With one of our fall athletic teams, we had a positive case of COVID, and 1 student identified as a close contact. I think it's important for that information to be shared here this evening so that people are aware of it. I know the members of the board, for you, there is masking guidance that comes from the federal CDC, there's masking guidance that comes from the state CDC, the Department of Education. Even though it is not a requirement this year, the Department of Education is strongly encouraging that public schools adopt and follow the recommended CDC guidance with regard to masks and reopening schools. With regard to the other factors of reopening schools, we are spacing to the extent possible, as you see in here tonight. Chairs are not 6 feet apart, they're 3 feet apart. What we've been advised by the CDC is to do the best you can to stay 3 feet apart. Pool testing, which was discussed by one of the members who spoke publicly tonight, is something that we have applied to put in place. Our 2 school nurses are working on that. It will be made available as an option. It is not a required thing. The board did not vote to make it required, but it's another layer of mitigation. People have mentioned the ventilation systems. We have worked with our HVAC people last year. Our ventilation systems are running 24/7. We have air filters in rooms. We're ventilating to the extent possible. We're taking all of the other mitigation measures, and one piece that's still on the table for discussion tonight is the masking piece. So, with regard to that, also looking at data, I say to the board members, you can talk about this when you get to that, but I also want to address something that was mentioned by a couple of speakers tonight with regard to the standard operating procedure. And this is a document that you can all find online, standard operating procedure from the main CDC on how to respond to a positive COVID case in schools. And it's in regards to what happens when there's a positive case, and I won't speak specifically to whether or not you have a universal masking policy. Close contacts must be notified for every COVID case in students or staff. And there's a definition for that, which is exposure within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes within a 24-hour period or any direct physical contact. Those contacts must quarantine for 10 days from COVID-19 school and school activities except, and there are a number of exceptions in here. One of them is the close contact student or staff is vaccinated, and if the exposure occurred more than 14 days after the individual's completion of the vaccination series, and if they're asymptomatic. Second exception, the close contact has a previous COVID-19 test result, molecular or antigen, collected within 90 days of exposure, and that's for staff or students. The third exception, the close contact staff or student participates in a weekly school pool testing, and the exposure was a school exposure. And the fourth one, which is the one that has been cited here by a couple of speakers, is the school has a mandatory mask policy. But I just want to make this clear so everybody understands it. If so, then an exposed classroom student does not need to quarantine from the regular school day activities when the student close contact was at least 3 feet from the infected student, provided that the school enforces consistent and correct use of well-fitting masks and no direct physical contact occurred. So one thing that can do, and I mentioned this also to you board members, that can reduce the amount of quarantines that students are put into. But please understand that exception 4 that I just read is limited to classroom exposures only. It is not school-wide, it is not school activity-wide. Exposures that occur in buses, cafeterias, school-sponsored activities are not eligible for this exception. And it does not apply to teachers or staff or other adults in the classroom. So it's one piece of the standard operating procedure that was mentioned by some of the emails that have been received and by some of the speakers tonight that I think you can consider. As far as local data, finding Hancock County data is not necessarily an easy thing. Certainly the National CDC has its transmission levels. Board members, I sent you some copies today. If you go back as far as July 22nd, from July 22nd through August 8th, Hancock County was in the moderate range. From August 9th through today, we're in the substantial transmission range. And this isn't a school-specific piece, this is a general piece, but the CDC guidance is if you're in substantial or high levels of COVID-19 community transmission, you're advised to wear face coverings in public indoor settings. So that's another piece that goes along with this. The other piece, and this is all data that you can find on the CDC site, when you're looking at where the virus is going and where the cases are going, looking at 7-day averages, from July 22nd through August 22nd, there has been an increase in daily cases in the 7-day moving average. Now this is statewide. Again, finding this specifically for Hancock County is not as easy. The 7-day positivity rate in Maine has gone from 2 back in July 22nd to 4.5 now. Percentage of cases of individuals ages 20 and below. Back in May it was 15%. As of today it's 19.3%. Average hospitalizations in Maine, July 22nd, we're talking a 7-day average of 5 new hospitalizations, to today, we're talking 15 new hospitalizations. The 7-day average case rate for Maine per 100,000, back on July 22nd, was just over 25. Today, it's closer to 90. So those are pieces of information that I think for board members to discuss, you also need to consider. I think the one piece that I would say is, and I don't think anybody that knows me knows I do believe in following and going with what is recommended by our CDC and the Department of Education. I think we need to remember that our goal is twofold. One is to keep our students and staff and community safe. And the second one, that's a close one behind, is to have our students and staff in school 5 days a week. We all know that our teachers and staff did an incredible job, and parents, I don't know what parents have, while we were in hybrid and while we were remote last year. It wasn't perfect, but people really worked hard. But I think we can all agree that the preference would be in-person instruction 5 days a week. So board members, as you begin your discussions tonight, I think if you look in the first paragraph of the plan that we approved 2 weeks ago, we talked about those 2 goals. Keeping students and staff and community safe, and in-person instruction 5 days a week. So I'll turn it over to the board.
Thank you, Dan.
So something that was kind of addressed in what Dan said is that in our last meeting we didn't have a chance to get to the point where we would discuss
what happens at those different color levels for our state. And we did say that we wanted this to be a fluid conversation, and that was subject to change based on what the data is in our area. So I do think that this is a really important conversation for us to be having again. I do think that there is a misconception that the reason that this conversation is happening is because we've received emails saying that somebody doesn't agree with the decision that we made, but rather this is a revisitation of this issue because it's changing every day, it's changing every week, and we need to be going into the school year with our best foot forward and our best option for that first part of our plan to keep kids in school 5 days a week in person.
I agree.
Mrs. McKay, can I add one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
A few people have made comments with regard to the survey. Mrs. Schlafer, thank you for your comments. One thing that I did want to share, with regard to the survey results, when the survey was administered, it was done in such a way to ensure that people were able to respond to it. If many of you remember, last year, it was a long time ago seemingly, when we did a survey, the tool that we used through Google Forms, with a certain setting, it only allowed people who had a Gmail account to respond. So one of the things we wanted to make sure was that we did not limit anybody's ability to respond. And that's the biggest reason why it was distributed the way it was. But we did recognize when we were reviewing the data after it closed that there were a number of duplicate responses. So just to have people understand how the results were put forth and distributed and shared at the last meeting. With the duplicate responses included, and again I want to emphasize, the duplicates were ones originating from the same email address, and the responses were identical to all three questions. There was a total of 1,001 of those. And please listen to the results, and then I'm going to share with you what the results were with the duplicates removed. With the duplicates in place, 79.6% of the respondents identified themselves as a parent or guardian. 16% identified themselves as a faculty or staff member. 4.4% as a parent, guardian, and faculty and staff member. With 80 duplicates removed, the percentages were as follows. Parent, guardian was 78.9%. Faculty, staff 16.7%. Parent, guardian, and faculty and staff 4.3%. They were essentially unchanged. With regard to the masking options, and again, the board had asked for some information regarding preferences, not a vote, but preferences. With the duplicates included, the optional based on parent choice or staff choice was 55%. When removing the duplicates, it was 54.8%. The option for following CDC guidelines with the duplicates included 19.7%, with the duplicates removed 19.6%. Following the guidelines of CDC with a plan to reduce based upon health data, with all the results in it, 13.3%, with the duplicates removed 13.5%. Masks in high traffic areas and optional in other areas, 11.8% with all of the information there, with the duplicates removed 12.2%. And I don't have to go through the pieces, but with pool testing, opt-in, 23% with everything, 23.5% with duplicates removed, 40.9% opted out with all the results, 40.5% with duplicates removed. And more information needed to make a decision, the difference was 0.1%. So with those removed, a couple of things were clear to me. One was, anyone that filled it up more than once, it was on both sides of the issue. Did not, at least with removing those, it did not change the results. The one piece that we did not do, and we got legal advice on this before we put the results out, there certainly could have been people that filled it out using different email addresses. Without contacting each person individually to find out their intent. The advice was, we want to make sure that we were not trying to skew the results. So I just want to be clear and transparent on how those results came forward. But we did make an effort to remove the duplicates, and that was the information that was shared. I will make an editorial comment. I do think it's unfortunate if there were people who filled it out more than once with the intent of trying to see the results. It's really unfortunate because the intent was to try to get a feeling from the community. But just to answer the people that ask those questions, that's how the results came. And I do appreciate you reaching out and letting us know what you're concerned about.
Thank you.
I think I'm good, because I don't think that it's important to respond to the comments that were made this evening. I think we're all of us on this board are doing our best to put any personal opinions that we may have aside to do what is best for the children and for the most children and to do the least possible harm. So I don't think I have anything more to add until we, at this point in time.
Thank you. So the intent of this agenda item was for us to set some benchmarks regarding if we get to a certain point, what is that certain point where we require masks for children?
And what those colors in our county,
And if it is colors,
Yeah.
or is it transmission, and what, it's for us to figure out what those benchmarks are.
How can we open masks if it's okay?
Sure.
Yeah, it's good into our microphone.
Yeah,
Bring it right to you.
I have an accent, so it's hard for people to understand. I have some comments, if you don't mind me giving. I wasted my life going to medical school and being trained as a virologist. I just called my colleague to pull out clinical trials that I'm having of a B-cell leukemia. Because guess what? Everybody seems to know what viruses are and particle size, and I need to go back to school. So that said, one thing we can do as a board, we're not acting as a medical panel, although I can be on a medical panel. Trust me. We're not acting as a medical panel, and I think, as you said, the agenda now is to give Superintendent Higgins guidance as what we need to do. I have talked to many scientists, I've looked at data, I've talked to many doctors. If I have an electrical or plumbing problem in my house, I don't try to fix it because it breaks. I'm here, and we're here to listen to medical professionals who spend days of their lives on this issue. So for me, and all the data feeds into CDC, so for me, I think having a masking policy match to what CDC recommends will be the safest way to open this school. Thank you.
I do want to add to that, and I know I said I wasn't going to comment on any of the comments that were made, but I do want to add that we do have a choice with our bodies, and when a board like this comes into play, it's when the choice that we make with our own bodies impacts other people's bodies. And that is what the potential of no masks at any level of transmission rate does, is I can send my child to school in a mask, and it will help protect them, but at the end of the day, if all the other kids in the school are not wearing a mask, the protection for my child isn't as good. So that choice is impacting other kids. And I think that it's
important. I saw only one person speak about the staff here, okay? I know personally there are teachers here that are immune compromised. They are on therapies, right? They've reached out to me. Right? These are not our slaves. These are our employees, and the board has to take their safe environment into consideration. We cannot let them hang dry. just because they're not here, because they fear being dried out by people, just because they're not here, that doesn't mean they don't have a voice with us.
Okay, so my biggest concern at this point, well, other than the safety of children, is that our children are in school 5 days a week. I've heard from so many teachers, whatever you do, please, we cannot go back to remote learning. And I believe that if we do universal masking for our children, that they will be in school more days than if we did not. That's my biggest concern right now. I am more concerned about the children who are under age 12, who cannot be vaccinated. I believe that those who are under 12, I think we need to have universal masking until they're able to be vaccinated. For those over 12, I feel that we need to set some benchmarks as to when masking is mandatory and when masking come off. That's my thought. So, any thoughts to that?
Yes, I think the benchmark should be that anytime the community transmission rate is substantial, high or moderate, there should be the universal masking. If it's low and none, it should be optional masking.
For all levels, Munir, or just for the 12 and up level? That benchmark, would that be for the whole school or just for certain levels?
I would say let it be for the whole school. For under 12, if they're vaccinated, then we should put that provides until they're vaccinated.
Okay, so after they're vaccinated.
I think the agenda here says today we're talking about opening schools, so I didn't know if since we're going to have this as a standing meeting, if we're going to revisit that if we ever get to a point.
Okay, so but for right now, you're saying, so if they are under 12, everyone is in a mask?
Yes.
To start school?
It has to be.
Okay.
And even right now, everyone who enters the doors, the Ellsworth schools or affiliate, should be masked. Because we are at a substantial rate, and I'm saying this not only for Hancock County, but we need to look at Penobscot County, because there are 2 roads that feed into Hancock County. And we have an international airport in Bangor, which is only 30 minutes away. And viruses do not stop at Dysart for coffee. Okay? So, we have to look at both counties. Substantial, high, moderate, full masking, everybody. Right?
And I think that the same could be said if we're in a low or no transmission, that it would be maskless for everybody. If we're in a low, no. But my big thing is with obviously I'm so upset here because I'm trying very, very hard to separate my personal, because I know with my daughter going into kindergarten, God love her kindergarten teacher, because it's not going to be easy to get her to keep her mask on, and I think that with her other friends keeping their masks on, it will work. But I guess I would like for this to continue to be fluid, so that should we get to the point where the transmission rate is low or non-existent, that those kids, when they get in the classroom, can take off their masks to learn, so that the teacher isn't spending the entire day trying to get them to focus on something other than playing with their mask. And I understand that they can't be vaccinated yet, and I hope this isn't the case, but if a vaccine is available for kids like they are anticipating towards the end of September, beginning of October, then by the time that we would be in a low transmission rate, that a lot of them would be starting to get the opportunity to be vaccinated as well.
Okay, so I just want to be clear on what I'm hearing you say. So, the start of school, everyone is in a mask if we are at a substantial or high or moderate level, regardless of how old you are.
Yes.
However, so if we, and even regardless of the age, if we go to a low, everyone can take their mask off. Is that what I'm hearing?
Optional.
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 Okay.
Because
So
there's
it's
no-
not, we're not mandating masks for under 12, regardless of the color. So it's going to be the same for all.
Yeah, I think the reason being that the staff is in that room. So we need to keep some uniform policy. At low transmission or no transmission, if we ever get to that point, or when CDC decides that now COVID is endemic, an endemic disease rather than a pandemic disease, right? Maybe that by that time, and they will only classify that when we have a vaccine. They would not say, okay, everybody go, just do what you want. Am I making sense? Yes.
A couple of questions and comments just for the board's consideration. One of the pieces, and we haven't seen it in Hancock County because it seems as though we were on moderate for a period of time, we've been at a substantial level for a period of time. If you look in the southern part of the state, you've had several counties that have gone back and forth.
Yes.
Again, they've gone from moderate to substantial, and under the discussion you're having right now, that wouldn't change anything. But what if you had a situation where you're going from low to moderate, and you're going back and forth every day? I think that's something you should factor into your conversation. The other piece, and as I look at the CDC guidance, it talks about local data also. You know, for me, and I think it's important that we acknowledge, again, you had a positive case today with the Y. We had a positive case today with one of our athletic teams. You've got an outbreak down the street. Are any of those local factors things that you want to consider in moving forward?
I think those would have to be addressed on a case-by-case basis, Dan. I think if we move forward with a bit more blanket, and then we continue, because, you know, that's what we did all year last year. We can consider it on a case-by-case basis. So I mean, it's devastating. I mean, in this decision, it's devastating to think of all those kids that go to the Y summer camp that are going to miss their first day of school because they're already going to be on quarantine. You know, like it's an example happening right now in our community, which is a reminder of why we want kids in school. But I think those could be considered on a case-by-case basis. If there's an exposure at this level, because those things also have to be considered differently as far as quarantine guidelines.
Well, and I appreciate it. And with those pieces, if we have a positive case in a school, or like we had today, we follow the standard operating protocol, and we make the quarantine decision based upon that. So certainly with that. But I guess I'm also thinking of other pieces in the community. You know, I'm just offering this for your conversation.
And Dan, I see what you're saying. So I think it's so confusing because there's so many levels, but I think if you were talking just fallen over, if there was a fluctuation from low to moderate, that maybe you could be, and then we're getting really confused.
Yeah.
So I just don't want to, something simple, because you're going to have to send this email all the time.
Well,
I've become a company, and I want to be clear, and for the public too. Even though I'm an advocate of striving with masking per the CDC guidelines, I want to see these things go away as much as any of you do. I think we all can agree with that.
Someday big bonfire.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things is it's a 7-day running average that changes the color. Or is it 14 days? I think if you look at maine.gov/COVID-19, it's a 14-day average. So when you see it will not flip from low to none to moderate to substantial, right? It will just go for a while. If you go past, you look at the map.
It'll have like a graph.
Yeah, it does. It's not going to be like today we're calling parents mask, tomorrow we're going no mask. It's not going to be like that. Although we did hear about bus number 6 almost every day. Bus number 6. So I think it's okay.
thought out to the rest of the board. This is my thinking. For under 12, my thought is they have to wear a mask until the vaccine is available, regardless of the color. For over 12, it would be masks when we are orange or red. When we are at a low or no level, they do not have to wear masks. Or a mask optional, thank you, Mayor. And it would be decided for Dan. I can't see him having to make this call every day. So the Sunday, every Sunday, the call will be made, okay? We are at a red or an orange, we're all masking, okay? We're at a low level, masks are optional.
So what's your basis for saying that below 12?
Only because they can't get vaccines.
Okay. What happens after the vaccines come out?
Then we talk about it.
Then, yeah, we agree about it.
Because this is a standing agenda item at this point, so.
That's reasonable.
But, and I do think, I apologize because I think we missed this step 2 weeks ago. We went with it and it was such a long meeting and there was so much emotion in that meeting that we missed this step. We didn't get to this step of what are the benchmarks. It was like optional masking, but I think we all knew that there were going to be certain instances where optional masking wasn't going to be an option.
One thing I have to raise is there were some parents here who said that their children are having issues about masking and they can't mask because of either mental or physical disabilities. Are we talking, so one thing is for kids who are having problems, there are clear masks available now and they're tightly fitted. I can send you the Amazon thing. It's $3, $3 to $5.
And the Department of Education has some available right now, and I believe we still have some in stock.
So I think for those children who are having those issues, I think the teachers, I understand, I speak many languages, 3 languages, is it fluently, but I speak 5. English is still works, I'm sorry. And because you need to see them out, right? And those teachers need to have that ability. And I understand there was a couple of parents who raised that issue.
So what I'm wondering is if we can do a kind of a blanket decision this evening and then address with Carol Ann and the special education staff about what types of things would potentially warrant an exemption that a doctor could perform for people who are in those special ed categories that really struggle with a mask.
Because you might imagine that is a conversation that has been taking place in the special ed world. And without going too far into discussion, I think it's probably a case-by-case basis is what the determination is going to be.
Yes, and I have 100% confidence in Carol Ann and her ability to work that with those families for sure. And I hope that we can, I hope for those whose students are feeling like, you know, that they hate school because they have to wear a mask or they struggle so hard that we can find some sort of something that will work. But in the meantime, I think I think we could discuss all night long what the different things or different exceptions could be. So I think what we need to do is we need to move forward with a plan, with the understanding for those parents that we hear you and that we understand that there are challenges and that we'll work with you however we can, that the schools and the administrators will work with you however they can to make the school year as successful for your student as they can.
Yes. May I add that we don't have to invent the mitigation measures that help the students with emotional and physical difficulties with masks, because there's other schools, systems, and organizations that were, this is something that's, and I'm not an expert on it, but I know people that there are systems out there to help, policies out there to help would be in favor of opening schools with universal mask requirement. I do think that we need to develop the procedures by which we will change it going forward. We're going to come up with benchmarks or some kind of thing. I think we can sort of sketch out in broad details, in general details tonight, as we've done, what those would be. And we're going from moderate to what's the next one down?
Well, and I think that's something you should clarify, because I think I'm hearing two different things. There are 4 levels. There's high, well, one level is nothing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But there's high, substantial, moderate, low, and none. Okay. When I'm hearing you talk, I heard you say, I believe, when it's high, substantial, or moderate, we have masks.
Yes.
When it's low or none, optional for those who are not vaccinated.
And I think we can...
Optional for those who are old enough to vaccinate.
Yep. Eligible for vaccination.
Yeah. Under 12 is going to be masked until we're told.
I would feel most comfortable if we decide to take action tonight, just saying that we're going to make masks mandatory, and then we can, going forward, we can figure out how we're going to. I don't think we need to necessarily decide the exact mechanism this evening.
Yeah. Because it is fluid, we have another meeting in 2 weeks. Where
I know that, but I think the agenda item was about setting benchmarks.
Well, and I do think that's important because we have a room full of very passionate folks that came this evening, and we had a room full of very passionate folks that came 2 weeks ago. And if we set benchmarks, they know that those benchmarks are set. We're going to discuss the benchmarks, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to vote every time. So these folks don't have to feel like they have to come plead their case every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Do we feel equipped and educated to a sufficient level to set the benchmarks this evening, or do we need to?
I personally would set the benchmarks for over 12 to be masked when it is either high or substantial. Moderate, no, just high or substantial. And
yeah, the only thing, I'm fine with that, but the only thing is moderate changes very quickly to high, So by setting it moderate, high, and substantial in one category, and low and none on another category, I think it will allow us to react on time, just in case we have a quick turnaround between a moderate case load to a substantial. It's not, there's a gap there, right, that we have to fill in very quickly. So I would categorize, I would play cautious right now. And this is what Paul's saying, let's go forward right now and see what we're thinking about right now. Because we're going to revisit this. There's going to be more data out. I don't know what the Delta variant is going to do, okay? And I can guarantee you that there will be other variants as long as we have unvaccinated people. And I'm not here to push vaccination. Your body, your choice. But if you don't get vaccinated, you're going to have more variants. It is a proven fact for 100 years since people started studying flu, okay? So, to me, I would be very cautious putting moderate into the substantial and high categories rather than having it be below, but we can revisit that.
I think that as far as benchmarks go, I know that I've been considering what the benchmarks would be over the last couple of weeks because, again, I think after the meeting we were on, was like, okay, so now we have to figure out what the actual plan is. And to be honest, I'm not extremely moderate or not moderate. Like, I think that, I think especially if we're in if that's for the 12 and up who are eligible to be vaccinated, the odds of being hospitalized when you're vaccinated are much lower. And if we go with, if it's in the low, non-existent, or moderate level, that once we get to the moderate level, we know that probably next week it's going to be high, and that we would be planning for that to change, for that to increase. Does that make sense? Like almost like low and non-existent is our mask optional, moderate is our warning sign, and then from there up is our mask being required.
Yeah.
Yeah, the CDC recommendation is for everyone to wear masks when there's a substantial rate of transmission. So I guess it's, trying to decide what does that mean. But,
and it has to be 2 counties. We have to look at Penobscot County. I know it's not our county, but the access to Bangor is very short. And so we cannot just say, well, Ellsworth is good, so we're good, because it doesn't take long for somebody to drive from Bangor to Ellsworth.
Kelly, I do just want to note that it is just past 8 o'clock, so we would need a consensus.
okay. All right, Lanier, I'll make a deal with you. You give up moderate, and I will go with Penobscot.
While you're pondering that, does the board reach consensus to go beyond 8 o'clock, as Ms. Cafeteria just said?
Yeah.
You don't have to vote about that. You just have to say your vote.
Okay, for now, I think, why don't we go with Paul's suggestion, just vote for what's there right now, and then come back to this after 2 weeks.
Go with what?
So Paul suggested that we just motion for school opening, and then in 2 weeks we can revisit that again.
He's not ready to give you moderate.
I'd love to give, but I just want to make sure that that's the right benchmark, and I don't think it'll change anything in terms of opening school and getting the school year started. It turns out that we're in agreement that we favor universal masking. Things, the conditions are unlikely. We can take a little bit of time to figure out how we're going to.
But not to play devil's advocate, but also not necessarily universal masking under all circumstances.
Me either. So what happens if we get to Sunday and we are at low? A week, the week when school starts. I think that we have to absolutely set some benchmarks tonight for the start of school.
Because we also don't meet again before.
No.
Your next scheduled meeting is September 14th.
Right, so we would be 2 weeks after school start, which would be, can make a huge difference. I'm not used to this type of microphone.
Okay, so what you're saying, Kelly, the benchmark right now would be substantial or high in Penobscot and Hancock counties.
Correct.
But when it's moderate, we can.
Masks are optional.
Masks are optional for above 12.
Above 12.
People who can be vaccinated.
Yes.
May I ask a question, because I'm the one that's going to be tasked with trying to solve it. If we're talking 2 counties.
Yes. And
if one is substantial and one is moderate.
Then we go with the substantial. We play copy.
So if Hancock County is moderate.
Yes. But Penobscot.
Or low, but Penobscot County is substantial, that means we're masking.
Yes.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes. And I'll tell you.
I disagree with that.
No, wait. I'll tell you something. I bet you $100 that cannot happen.
Can you bet that with me?
$100. The reason being that virus does not stop in Oregon.
But again, here I am being devil's advocate, and I kind of may have heard a little bit of this out my ear, is Washington County's not that far away either. People come to Ellsworth from Washington County to do their grocery shopping.
So Washington County has less population than Penobscot.
Okay.
This virus is spread by people.
Okay, so I appreciate your explanation of that. I think that answers the question.
And this is what I'm thinking.
And what about Waller County?
Well, this is the county, right? So people, so if you look at the maps, which I have, right? The changes are from county to county, but you will see they will flip around very fast, right? Before you can even make a decision, those will flip around. So this is why I'm saying Hancock and Penobscot counties, because you have more people up here that are closer to Ellsworth. I'm not making a statewide decision. I'm making a decision for Ellsworth School, right? And if it was a state decision, it would be something else. If I was making a decision for Bangor, it would be something else, right?
I think I agree with Kelly that I would be willing to give community air Penobscot County if he's willing to give the moderate level to the 12 and up. Yeah, so.
But I think that if there's a difference in the two counties, that Hancock County should, the rating in Hancock County should
try it?
Yes.
Why is that? I'm just asking, sorry.
Yeah.
Because viruses.
I understand that. I feel like Penobscot County is because, well, like you mentioned with Washington County, there's so many more people in Penobscot County.
And I think if you think back to when the virus started, for the longest time, Hancock County had 0 reported cases, and all the counties around us had several reported cases. So I think that's part of it. But Kelly would tell them that we're going to give Penobscot counties and we'll give us moderate. We have to give them Penobscot counties if they'll give us moderate.
But
the question now is if Penobscot County is high, right, and we are moderate, what do we do, right? That's the question. For me, I think the proximity to Penobscot County having a higher population will flip Hancock County and we will be playing catch up. And as I've heard a couple of doctors say, we should be proactive. We should be playing catch up because once it's in here, getting it out will be so hard.
I hear you. I'm also curious about what their vaccination rate of 12 to 18 is.
I think
know that we
we
have
pulled that from
high
the
vaccination rate.
This was on the CDC's website earlier today, right?
I don't know that. How about we agree to start the school year with what you're suggesting, just to get us through to the
Yeah,
next meeting?
just start. I think we can take it down the road, yeah.
Okay.
We can take it down the
Okay.
road.
I don't think we have time to collect data and
Yeah.
whatnot that that's getting like.
I need to look at a couple of pieces of data to be certain
Okay.
whether we can dissociate the two counties.
That would also give us a chance to confirm with Dr. McGregor and other health professionals in CDC.
Okay. Yep.
So would our motion be that you've got your,
I got a motion.
he's so prepared.
Go for it, Leah.
Okay, I'm gonna remove this so that everyone can hear clearly. I motion to have all Ellsworth schools and affiliate institutions to have universal masking as long as the transmission rate, community transmission rate is substantial or high in Penobscot and Hancock counties.
And that would be for ages 12 and up. Everyone.
This is it.
Sorry, I'm like,
universal masking.
okay, thank you. Do we need to include when the masks will come off, or do we not need to, since you said moderate?
We don't need to come out because I removed moderate. I haven't written this.
Can you say one more time?
I haven't written.
Can you
One more time?
say one more time for me? I'm gonna close my eyes.
I motion to have all Ellsworth schools and affiliate institutions, whatever, CTC, to have universal masking as long as COVID transmission in the community is substantial or high in Penobscot and Hancock counties.
May I read that back? Because I want to clarify. I presume you're referring to all students and staff and visitors and anyone else?
Yes. Instance. Every
Facility usage, athletic events indoors.
affiliate institution.
So,
But I do have a question, I'm sorry. If we're putting the motion out there for moderate or high, for high or significant, do we need to say what happens if it's below? Because what if we get to the first day of school and our transmission rate drops to moderate? Do we have to include?
Say something about under 12.
The under.
Okay. So I can modify this, right? A motion to have all Ellsworth schools and affiliate institutions to have universal masking as long as COVID transmission is substantial and high in Penobscot and Hancock counties, but, no, we should say but, no. Excluding children who are under 12, which will be universal masking at that time.
I think that makes sense.
Right?
So is the intent that you have that 12 and up, those eligible for vaccination,
yes,
will go by the motion that you just made?
Yes.
And students not eligible yet for vaccination, below 12,
Yes.
will stay universally masked until...
Should we have two separate motions?
You can have a combination of those motions.
Okay.
Or you can do two separate
We
ones.
can have two separate, or we can have a combination.
So let's start with this first one.
So let's have two separate.
Two separate.
So what you said,
Now that you've checked that
all other schools and affiliated institutions will have universal masking if the United States CDC community transmission rate is substantial or high in Penobscot and Hancock counties.
Yes.
Does that mean that if one is substantial and the other one isn't, one's moderate,
We would still mask.
you still mask? Okay.
Now,
Can I, just to avoid you coming back, I think your word should be Penobscot or Hancock.
Yes. Yes, because they'll never
By
match.
going
They
in,
may not match.
you're saying that one of both have to.
Yeah.
Based upon the motion, you want one or the other.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
is,
Is this inside and outside?
yeah, I was going to say, this is universal masking indoors.
Indoors.
I'll give for the board, okay, the recommendations are for indoors, it's not for
Yes.
outdoors.
So when they're outside of recess, they can
And
still
then
wear their masks.
Indoors, are we going to allow students and others to take their masks off if they're eating?
Yeah.
That wasn't in the motion that I heard.
So it would be except for outside and while eating, or designated.
No, but I believe in the plan that was approved. That's the other piece.
So we don't have to add all those
In
pieces.
essence, what you're doing is, the plan is being amended by this motion.
Okay.
To change the masking pieces. The other pieces that are in there
They will stay.
still apply.
Okay.
Which is right now in the lunchrooms, based on the guidance that we have, the best you can to keep students 3 feet apart. And if you can't, that should not be a barrier to bringing people back to school 5 days a week. That comes from both the US CDC and the state CDC.
Are the eating spaces 6 feet apart? Eating spaces 6 feet apart?
At least 3. To the extent possible, as close to 3 to the extent possible. That's what the CDC guidance is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have the motion.
So this is the first motion. It's for, okay, so,
You got it?
yeah.
Okay, I think we're good. Second? I'll second that. All those in favor? Okay, any discussion?
I would just add that I'm going to vote for this. I would feel more comfortable if we just had a simple motion saying we will follow the recommendations of the CDC. That's, I think we're complicating it more than we need to, but in the interest of moving this forward in a better direction, I'd be willing to.
So
And part of the reason why at least I think that I wasn't the CDC's recommendation is, for schools, is masking no matter what the transmission level, isn't it? Isn't that what they said? So that means that if we went with that motion, then we would be putting the kids in masks unless we met and overturned the decision for the entire year.
You know what you would have, what you would have.
I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, what
It's
you
not
would
like
have,
I'm trying to
a couple of things. What you would have
grab
is,
pages.
unless you came back as a board and changed the decision, or, as we saw so many times during the past 18 months, guidance from above changes. Those are the two options you have. You're relying on the guidance changing, or this is going to be a standing item moving forward at your meetings. That's an option. So to answer your question, Beth, I hope I'm answering.
Yes, and Mimi, I would say obviously you're welcome to amend your motion if you would like to, but I do think if that motion is amended, that we potentially will have two motions on the table. Okay.
Procedurally speaking, you can amend a motion, or if the board is interested in making a change to, I think what Paul was putting on the table, it would be that you could withdraw your second, you could withdraw the motion. And start.
Okay, so do I not have a choice but to withdraw my second and
No,
withdraw the motion, because I still would second that motion?
No.
And I would support that original motion.
Procedurally, okay, you would have to withdraw your second before the year can withdraw his motion.
So you still want this?
Yes, I don't have the desire at this time to withdraw my second.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor?
4-0.
Yes.
The other thing you were discussing was students who are not eligible for vaccination.
Oh, yes, now you have to do that second one with the children under. There you go. So I would make a motion for universal masking for children under the age of 12 at the Ellsworth School Department, until which time there is a vaccine available, and that will be revisited.
I second that. Discussion? All those in favor?
Can I ask, before you go, I just want to make sure I'm right. So the motion is to institute universal masking for all students under age 12 in the Ellsworth School Department until vaccinations are available.
Yes, and then we will revisit.
So let's just say, I'm asking for clarification. Let's just say October 1st, vaccinations become available for students ages 12 and under. Is that when it changes, or is it when students have the opportunity?
Until which time students have the opportunity to be fully vaccinated.
And I'm not trying to make the
No.
motion.
That makes perfect sense, because October 1st doesn't make any difference if nobody's vaccinated until November 1st.
Because it takes about 2 weeks. It takes about 2 weeks for the vaccine to actually.
Yes, and I don't think we can put a timeline on it yet, because we don't know if vaccines for children 12 and under are going to be a 2-step like they were for adults, or if they'll be a 1-step.
And it also depends on what type of vaccine.
Yeah.
If it's Johnson & Johnson, it would be 1. If it's Pfizer, Moderna, it would be 2.
Okay. Mrs. Tucker?
I just wanted to bring to the board's attention, you're talking about 12-year-olds, and they're divided in classrooms. So you're going to be, teachers are going to have a classroom of, let's say 20 kids as an example, and some of them are going to be 11, and some of them are going to be 12. That's usually 6th grade. You also have to consider classes that are multi-leveled or combined, such as band, chorus. I'm just pointing those out there for discussion points as you're considering the vote.
So since that microphone was not on, it's okay, what Ms. Clifford was saying is that there are some grade levels, such as 6th grade, there are some classes where age levels are combined, so you may have some students who are 11 and some students who are 12, and then we want to make sure that that's addressed, because you may have a class of 20 students where 10 can take off their masks and 10 cannot.
Is it typically 6th grade, April?
Yeah, 6th grade.
6 and under?
Yeah, 6th grade.
So should we make it a grade?
Typically.
If you make it a grade, though, we're still talking about kids of different ages.
I think
The issue is you're going to have kids in the same grade.
I think we're going to have to, it's difficult And I understand that, but I do think that we have to stick with the age, because the reason why that is being allowed is because of their ability to get vaccinated. But I get what you're saying.
I'm sorry, this is not time for public discussion.
But I get what Ms. Clifford is saying. I get what she's saying, because that those 12-year-olds who are allowed to take off their masks are in a room with 11-year-olds who cannot be vaccinated. So I get that.
I just wanted to bring that point up for teachers,
Yeah.
because I don't know that'll be a point of concern brought to Mr. Wood
I
myself.
think we should just.
Mrs. Clifford, what would you suggest?
I'm not sure, but I just wanted the board to discuss it and kind of be aware, because we're talking about age and we kind of operate in grade levels.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that it was a point that the board was aware of as you were discussing, that's all.
So I think we should make it a grade. If it's 6th grade, it's a mixed classroom, right? Yeah. So if we say 6th grade and under, then I guess, because you cannot have a classroom which is half mask, half not mask. And, you know, that would create a division. And right now we're having universal masking anyway, but we're talking this something down the road here. Right.
So just when I think I've made the right decision, I feel like I haven't made the right decision. So Mrs. Clifford, her point of, like, I desperately don't want to say universal masking for everybody until there's a vaccine for everybody. But I mean, at the same time, now we have kids in band together who are blowing out all this air that potentially some of them are not able to be vaccinated.
A thought for the board, as you're moving forward, we don't know when authorization is going to be given.
That's
for
true. That's
students,
true.
for
We
people.
could be at the moderate level, the
So
high level.
if you went with your first motion that you've already passed, and you're going to have this as a standing agenda item, and from my perspective, I think you're going to want to wait until students have had the ability to be fully vaccinated.
Yes.
So it's not going to happen the day that the
Yeah.
authorization is given. Perhaps this is a discussion point on your subsequent agenda items for people who are going to become eligible later.
Could we perhaps ask for input from staff and administrators of those classes and those grade levels where there would be a mix of 11 and 12-year-olds?
We can provide that information to you. I guess what I'm suggesting is,
No,
instead of trying to piece that together tonight, right now it's not an option anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those vaccines are not available for those students that age. Keep it on your agenda. We can provide that information. In fact, I'm looking at our principal, he's pretty good with data. He can probably find that pretty quick.
Yes, I would love for
Oh, you already got
that.
it, right, Sharon?
And even potentially, Mr. Wood, even maybe ideas from teachers of those classrooms of what could be done should that ever be the case where the 12-year-olds would technically be able to take off their masks, but the 11-year-olds would not.
Okay, so we will discuss this at our next meeting, but we do need a motion for now.
So there's a motion, it just needs a second. Dan, did you get clarified what you needed clarified? Universal
I'm a little
masking.
confused now. I
So
thought what you were going to do
yes.
was,
So
the
it's
first
universal.
motion, the first motion to be done makes it universal masking. No, you're right, you still got to have something for under 12.
So
it
the second one.
remains universal masking for under 12,
Yeah, so it would be.
regardless of community transmission.
Right, until, let's just leave that off, because they won't be able to be fully vaccinated until we have a chance to. So we'll just say universal, it'll be a while. So if we just say universal masking for children under the age of 12, regardless of transmission level, that would be the motion. And then once the vaccine becomes available, then we can discuss what that will mean, if that will mean anything.
So if we go zero, if COVID just miraculously disappears, which won't happen, I'm just throwing it out there. Kids under 12 will still have to mask.
That's not, it's not.
You can come back and have an emergency meeting or something like that.
Okay.
We would come together, we would have an emergency meeting where we would all burn our masks, and we would dance, and it would be wonderful.
Yes, okay. I second.
All right, do it second.
So is the motion universal masking students under age 12 in the Ellsworth School Department, regardless of the United States CDC community transmission level?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
the motion?
Yes.
Muniri? Beth, you made that?
Yes.
We'll take a minute.
Discussion?
Doesn't solve the 11, 12-year-old problem, if you were right.
But at this point at this point, the odds of us starting the first 2 weeks of the school year with, right now we're in a high level, right?
Yeah.
So the odds of us, what is level?
You're insubstantial right now.
We're
I think the
insubstantial.
issue that you're talking about now is you don't know when vaccines are going to be available to those students, so you need to clarify that for now, until something changes. Students under age 12, regardless of grade level, will be universal masking.
Yes, but what Nate is asking, I think what Nate is saying is in those classrooms where you have an 11 and 12-year-olds, and what I'm saying is that I think what we would do in that situation is if somehow, some way, before our next board meeting on September 14th, the transmission level went down to moderate, and we had a situation where we had 11 and 12-year-olds in the same classroom, we would have an emergency board meeting to discuss that. Well, Mr. Wood, in the meantime, is going to be working on data for how many students that impacts, how many classrooms that impacts, so that we can be starting to work towards having a plan, should that happen before a vaccine is available and administered to children who are under the age of 12. Does that make sense? So we're planning to revisit this on the 14th to discuss the 11 and 12 year population.
I think there's a high likelihood that there will be moderate transmission in the county at some point before December.
No, but we're talking September 14th. We'll meet again on September 14th and hopefully have some sort of plan. And it will be a regular meeting where we'll be able to make votes and motions, and if we have to make a new vote and motion at that time, that we would be able to do that based on the information that we get from Mr. Wood and the teachers in those grade levels.
For now, as a doctor recommended, we're going to start at a high level, right? We're starting with masks for everybody, then we'll see what this case in 2 weeks, right?
No, that's not what the motion says, though. The motion says that in this next 2 weeks, the level drops to moderate. They're talking 11 and 12. The problem here at this point is you're 11 and I'm 12, and we're in the same classroom, and now we've gone to a moderate level. You can take off your mask, which is awesome for you, but I can't be vaccinated yet. So you're technically potentially exposing me to COVID before I can have a vaccine.
Just go with 6th grade and under.
Would that make it, I know we still have some overlap with band and stuff, but would that make it better?
I'm not sure. I mean, I just wanted to bring the point up to you so it was part of your discussion, because it's going to be a question from teachers to us.
Yeah.
What about teachers of the under 12s who are going to be in the room with them?
So I think we need to, I understand there's questions.
Yeah, and this is not time for public participation. I'm sorry, I know you have questions, but we need to finish this work.
This is definitely, I love you, Ms. Clifford, but I wish you'd said it before we voted. I think that does pose a significant challenge.
I don't think there's an urgency to.
This is a special meeting, so.
I don't think there's an urgency to resolve this issue tonight around this motion. I think we can table it. That would be my preference, and figure out how a plan can work before we try to put it into.
So are you thinking reverse what we decided already, or to table the discussion about 11 and 12-year-olds in the same classroom? This is an assumption, and I would love to see it happen, but I'm assuming we won't drop in the next 2 weeks to the moderate or low level. It would be quite.
I think it's unlikely.
So that gives us, again, the time for, and then if we have to make a different motion at that point in time, then we do, and we can change it then to be 6th grade if that's what we so desire.
Yeah. So procedurally, if that's the way you're going to go, if you're not going to vote on this rather than tabling it, which would be another motion in a second, I would recommend withdrawing the second and withdrawing the motion.
But I think we still want to keep the motion of that the 12, regardless of vaccine status, that the 12 and under would be, regardless of transmission status, 12 and under would be masked universally.
I may have missed it because of the hour. I thought what Paul was saying was, this is not something we need to decide upon tonight. If I missed that, I apologize.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was just wondering, I'm asking if we could be willing to withdraw the second and then the motion so that we can get some more input and figure out all the implications of how we do this.
For which motion? The 12 and up or the 12 and under or both?
The second motion, the one that we haven't voted on yet, the 12 and under.
But I think we need to do something because right now at our last meeting, we said that masking would be optional.
Yeah.
So I think we need to do something so that we're starting the school year with masks on those.
Right. I thought we just had, you've already done that with your first motion. That's just required.
We have a.
I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time focusing on what the conversation is that we're
So
having.
we just took action to require masking for the start of the school year because of the trends.
So we didn't change that motion, Dan, to say anything about age in that first motion?
The motion that was voted upon was also calls for school department schools and affiliated institutions to have universal masking if the United States CDC community transmission rate is substantial or high in Penobscot or Hancock counties.
Okay, so that has no age.
That was me.
Okay.
That covers
I get,
all
I'm good
schools,
now.
that covers extracurricular activities, that
I thought we
covers.
had said an age, so yes, what Paul is saying makes complete sense. We don't need to do another motion because we've covered everybody. So Munir was the second. So you would withdraw your second, and I would withdraw my motion.
All right, we're good, we're moving on. Number 2, discussion of standing committee schedules. I would make a motion that we table this for tonight. Abby's not here, she's the chair of the committees. Paul and I haven't.
Yeah, I can tell you the conversations in the committees we've had are looking to try to schedule a monthly one. I know with some committees, depending upon the time of year, it's going to be more than that. I think the discussions are happening as the board wanted to see. I would be moving to on a regular basis.
Yes. So do we have to make a motion to table it?
No.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
So Kelly made the motion, I'll second that.
Yep. Discussion, all those in favor? Okay. Discussion and consideration of middle school social studies resources.
I don't believe that committee has met and finalized their recommendation, so without that happening, take action.
So I would make a motion to table that item as well.
Second that. Discussion, all those in favor? Discussion and consideration of disposition of additional state subsidy for education.
So as we talked about at our last meeting, the state, the legislature passed a budget and then subsequently passed a supplemental budget and gave money back to school districts. Ellsworth got, I don't have the figures in front of me, but it was just under $700,000. I know you haven't yet. I don't know if we need the exact numbers, but it was a little under $700,000. The disposition of those funds is up to the school board, each school district. District's boards will decide what to do with it. Our finance committee met, we came up with a plan in consultation with Dan and our business manager, Caroline Heller, to use some of the money for some needed, two needed areas. One was to increase half-time position of a health teacher at the high school full-time. The other was to replace the boiler at HCTC that had just failed. We offered to give, we met with the city's finance committee and how much to return to the city, to the taxpayers, and we were proposing about $120,000, and they didn't think that was enough, so we came back with $200,000. We came to the city council meeting and offered that. Basically, our proposal was to ask, basically in a way, ask for their blessing or ask if they'll endorse our plan. One of the councils made a motion to reject it, and that motion failed by a vote of 4-3. I was anticipating making a second motion to accept it or else to request a different amount, but no motion was forthcoming, so council moved on to other So now it's back in our hands, and Munir and I, as finance committee, want to recommend that we just stay with the plan that we adopted last time, not ask the city to approve it, just to return $200,000 in funds to the city to be returned to taxpayers, and then to use the amount that we just discussed for the boiler and the health teacher. And then there's this, what's left over is about $360,000, I think.
$369,000 change.
There it is. And put that into a reserve account for property tax.
Stabilization
Property tax what?
Stabilization.
Stabilization fund. So that we will return it. So next year, if our budget is, if there's unexpected expenses or less support from the state to help keep our tax, local tax burden for the schools more stable, we can use, these funds will be used then to do that, next year and possibly the year after. So the funds will be, we will be using them the way the council has asked for, just not right now.
So either way, the next 3 years.
The money is either coming back or not being taken.
Yeah, so we're trying to keep the taxes down.
Yes.
Well, we're trying to keep the taxes not only down, but stable.
Yeah, stable, because we don't want the taxes to go up.
The other thing I'd like to add for the board and for the folks who are here, I think this is one of the nice things about Ellsworth. This is the second time this has happened since we withdrew from RSU 24. There was additional subsidy several years ago, and it was a conversation, even though, as Paul said, the school board has statutory authority to dispose of those funds based upon order that was passed by the council when they passed the budget. 3 or 4 years ago, we came back and had a conversation with the council and came to an agreement on how those funds would be used. And that was the process that we followed this time. So there have been several meetings. I think it showed good faith on the school board's part, transparency on the school board's part, and some candor on the part of the council for speaking. And I think that's a healthy piece. It's important that even though people view the school department as separate from the city, we are a department of the city, governed by the board. I think it's healthy to have those conversations.
So I'll just add one thing for the record. The money we put in to our kids and teachers is an investment, and it's not something we're just spending. To keep good teachers, we need to pay them well, okay? So having, I've heard comments about, us trying to grab money and all that. That is all false. Any money that goes into the teachers, into the schools, is an investment into the future. I have seen this personally. 4 or 5 years ago, I wouldn't take a student to work in my lab. In the past 2 years, I've taken 2 students to work in my lab. Why? Because the teaching they're getting now, the resources they're getting now, is world class. And this is why I can have them in my lab.
All right, do we have a motion?
I would make a motion to approve the disposition of the additional state subsidy for education as presented and recommended by the Finance Committee.
I second that. Discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you for your work on that process. A good responsible way to sort those funds out. I met you too, I just can't.
I think I'd like to give a lot of credit to Parental, our business manager, who really helped us talk about this and figure out the best way to go about it. And Dan as well. Dan, thank you.
Number 5, discussion and consideration of facility and transportation committee recommendation.
I would like to make a mea culpa on this one. This should have been on your last meeting's agenda. In getting together all the materials for your last meeting, there was one item that the Facilities and Transportation Committee did vote to recommend the board approve. I missed it getting ready for the meeting, so this is being brought forth. This is for to accept a proposal for a sensory path repainted at EMS as presented and recommended by the Facilities and Transportation Committee. And there were some pictures and materials about that in your packet. It was a wonderful thing, kind of a collaborative effort among some people. I see this is Clifford Naughty, I'm sure she's part of that.
And the Facilities and Transportation Committee was really excited about this. this opportunity. It's really incredible opportunity for our kids to get outside and to be working, especially in going into another school year with masks, where they can be outdoors and learning and engaging. I know how much my children appreciated field day last year as a scavenger hunt, so I think they're going to love it.
I love this idea. Do we have a motion?
I move that we accept the proposal for a Century Cafe EEMS as presented and recommended by the Facilities and Transportation Committee.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Okay. That brings us to calendar and announcements. Our next school board meeting is Tuesday, September 14th, at 6 o'clock. And that brings us to adjournment.
Having no further business, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
The time is 8:42.
I am not here at 9.
Thank you.